Well, my friend will explain the meaning of what do you mean by secondary analysis in a minute. In the last slide, I guess. Well, we are making a reanalysis of an already existed researches and data, and these data are being they will be taken from the Eurobarometer. The Eurobarometer is a series of public opinion surveys conducted regularly on behalf of the EU Commission and the EU institutions. Well, the Eurobarometer offers a very good surveys and reports that would help us to check on the public opinion to know if people do agree with some policies or do agree with some issues that happen on the EU and the public opinion in each EU country. Well, in this slide, as you can see, we will discuss the research question, which is, does EU's legitimacy suffer from the management of migration crisis? So as you can see, we have two main variables in this question. We are talking about legitimacy in the EU, and we're talking about the migration crisis and the effect that this crisis, among many other crises, would have on the legitimacy of the EU. Well, by searching in the reports and surveys that exist on the Eurobarometer website, we found out that many crises do actually affect people's opinion, public opinion regarding and their reaction toward the EU as an institution and toward the legitimacy of the EU. Now, one of the crises is the migration crisis, and we noticed that people's reaction toward the migration crisis does differ according to the time and according to the current situation in the EU. For example, in the latest survey, the standard Eurobarometer survey, we noticed that the economic concerns and some actually other concerns like the economic and the health concerns during the pandemic do affect people's opinion more than the migration crisis. So we will talk about that more in detail in our research, and we will actually have. I said that we will discuss opinion surveys. Yeah, and in some of the member states, we only have 10 member states. We're gonna make this research on only 10 because it's really hard to conduct this research on all the 27 countries. And we have chosen countries that lie in different points of the spectrum. We have Eurosceptic and we have Eurocentric countries. We have anti-immigration, we have pro-immigration. So we tried really hard to have a variety of countries. And to the third point, we have many key terms and topics to talk about in this research project. We will mainly focus on legitimacy in the EU. We will take the data from the Eurobarometer. We're gonna discuss surveys. We're gonna talk mainly about the crisis, the migration crisis, among all other crises that exist there on the Eurobarometer website. So that's all. Take the mic to my colleagues to talk about the research, the literature. Yes, my colleague Razan.
Okay, so actually we chose some really good academic literatures. We're still looking for more, but till now we have found these. One is for Baldwin Edwards, which is the politics of evidence-based policy in Europe's migration crisis. Actually, the article explores the nature of the Europe's migration crisis and the extent to which the development of new migration management policy was grounded in evidence about the causes, drivers of migration, and key consequences of Europe. Another one was for Bradford and Jackson, which is policy legitimacy among immigrations in Europe. This one discussed actually the data for the European social surveys, that are used to explore the association of the relationship between immigration and the legitimacy. Then we found another one, which is for Angels, political legitimacy and the European crisis analysis of Appropriate project. This one discusses mainly offers a possible diagnosis and trace a number of scenarios for the future of the EU and its integration process that are affected by the migration crisis. Then we have one for EHAM, which is the test of popular expectations from the Journal of Common Market Studies. This one talks mainly about what are the appropriate criteria for assessing the legitimacy of the EU. And it uses data from the Eurobarometer to adjudicate between rival perspectives on EU legitimacy. The findings strengthen that the case for holding the EU to the same liberal democratic standards of legitimacy that's applied to political authority in the nation state. And then we do have, we do have some information from the European Commission public opinion from the official website. And then another article for Stevens, which is developing a migration crisis in the EU, developing a framework for analysis of national security and defense strategies compared to migration studies. This one also talks about it addresses migration security nexus in the EU by assessing. Slow down.
No, 3 minutes left. 3.5.
Okay, I will just by assessing member states' national security and defense strategies as well as other projects that are considered important for the migration crisis. So many other articles, so now I will just give the floor.
So basically our research main argument is people as the source of legitimacy believe that the migration crisis, as the currently most discussed topic, right, when were the years that we're looking for, affects the European Union legitimacy in a negative light. That is what our academic research is going to be. And that's what we thought like to be and to base that our theory. Also, the academics context is of course the Eurobarometer, which is connected to the Commission Department, as we said before, and of course the public opinion. And with the literature that we will have, this will be the base of our academic. This is just a visualization of how the research is going to be. Identify the problem, develop a plan, search for relevant materials, read the materials, of course, then analyze the data and interpret the result, and then make a conclusion. And finally, the method that our research is going to be is the secondary analysis. It means that we are going to take data that are in the Eurobarometer, which will show graphs and etc. And we will take that data and analyze it again. So that's why it's a secondary analysis. And then our countries that we chose are France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Italy, Latvia, Luxembourg, Poland, Romania, and Sweden. We think that this brings some countries from more Eurosceptic agenda, more Central Europe, more some countries that are facing the migration crisis like Greece and Italy, some countries from the north like Sweden and Latvia, and maybe even small countries like Luxembourg, and of course Germany and France against Poland and Hungary, which will be our main focus of the debate in the research, and that's it.
Okay.
So we have to learn to do that.
So, I told you before. So 1 minute ahead of time, so that's good. Yes, anyone who wants to comment? Did you get what they aim at? You saw the research question. Is what they proposed that they wanted to do the right way to answer the finally arrive at results and reliable results or relevant results? What is your opinion, please?
I think that it's good that you're not taking the whole 27 states and choosing some, but just make sure that these countries, in terms of percentage of population or representation in the EU, are a good representation.
First of all, we were forced not to take all 27 by them. But yeah, you need to do that. This is like only a first graph of the 10 countries.
And we try to hardest to have a variety of countries, like different from different perspectives and from different sizes and things.
And location.
Any other question?
And that's quite interesting. I thought it was a recommendation. You interpreted we have been forced. The application of forced violence. Okay, this is how we are seen and perceived by you. Okay.
I think it's quite realistic.
Anyone else who wants to come
I have a question. How does Euroscepticism play a role in choosing those member states? I mean,
Mainly we are talking about the immigration crisis. We have countries in the EU that are pro-immigration, like Germany and France, and countries that are anti-immigration, like Poland and Hungary. Having countries that have different opinions, because we are working on public opinion after all, having countries that have different perspectives of these two different sides of the spectrum will be really essential in our research.
The public opinions on the management of the migration crisis, which are countries their job to manage the crisis. So if per se Germany and France are pro the migration management and Poland are against, it's very important and vital to put that in the research.
Yeah, you here say that in your research you're looking at quantitative secondary analysis. Like from your discussion and presentation, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there'll be a bit of qualitative also methods applied in terms of figuring out the terms of legitimacy as you mentioned, and the migration crisis as terms and what the effects are.
Yeah, that will be like in the literature part.
Yes, literature.
Those articles that Razi talked about will be like the first quantitative, and the main part, the analysis of the research, will be more the secondary from the Eurobarometer.
Yeah, but we will take that into consideration while preparing the Thank you so much.
I think the same answers because it's here in the guidelines. They don't have a choice, they have to do the Eurobarometer.
Any other questions?
Anyone else who wants to ask something or comment on what we just enjoyed?
Okay, then I would say, well, this is just, I want to help you, but I want to help you in a critical way. So not to be nice to you, but really to be constructive and to be precise. First of all, it's about the legitimacy of the European Union. This is what you have to measure. How do you do that? How can you guess? How can you check the legitimacy? What will you do?
Yeah,
This is the first question.
Yeah.
The second question is, you will link legitimacy of the European Union, which you have to measure, and you have to explain how you do that.
Yeah.
What kind of question from the Eurobarometer would you use for that?
Mhm.
And you have to link that not to national policies, not to the migration problem, but to the European Union's management. That's probably the confusion, not only with your project, but with the general public and whatever, but finally it's only about the EU legitimacy, not about the role of Germany or the German government. So it's about EU. How does the EU, how is the EU be regarded by the citizens in dealing with the management of the migration crisis? So that's it. It's not about migration, it's about EU's role. Another one is, how do you select these member states? Well, you just have 10 member states. You said something about one. How do you know that they are more Eurosceptic and less Eurosceptic? How do you know that they do better? And so, what are your criteria? How did you select them? Just by, well, I have the feeling that they are such, or you have to give some more specific arguments and data for each selection.
Okay, can I answer that question? So we relied really on the surveys from the Eurobarometer itself. The
So you already did that?
Yes, we tried our hardest to read at least the last three standard Eurobarometer survey. They have graphs, and in those graphs we can see how people and how the public opinion toward the EU in general, the image of the EU. So we had this graph that we discussed back then, and we said that yes, this country and that would they will collectively are the total opposite. So it's good to different points of views.
So you already know that I am Eurosceptic, but what is the effect of the management of the euro crisis on this?
Well, this is what we are going to do.
How will you do that?
Second of all, it's the first draft, so if you think that we need to change one or two countries,
No, you have to go on.
so go on. Okay.
Okay. And the first question was that,
How do you measure legitimacy?
yeah, we had a debate among us about what do we mean by legitimacy in the first place and who gave the legitimacy to the EU. And we had different debates because we didn't find the word legitimacy in the Eurobarometer itself. So we looked, we had a debate with what word we can use to replace the word legitimacy or to have the same effect of legitimacy, but with the information or the data we were looking for. And Doug suggested the word image.
Image.
Yeah. And I think Basan suggested the word concerns, I guess. So we
Are
have
there any
that.
questions about image and concerns?
I think that does not put
So you cannot
replace
measure
the
that.
word.
You
Yeah.
cannot measure.
So we know that who gives legitimacy to the EU?
The
Is first
citizens.
citizens, but institutions do. I had the answer of citizens exactly just the way you said, but we had a big debate about that. My friend Ezan said, no, institutions.
But institutions do not answer the Eurobarometer, so the citizens do.
Mhm. So that was like the answer about it. We had no discussion about that. Yeah, like because people do elect those in the institution. For example, the parliament, people elect the people in parliament and then parliament gives legitimacy to the EU. Then if we measure, how to measure legitimacy in this case? We need to go back to public debate.
It's a cycle.
Yeah.
I would like to join into this debate. And yes, if the term legitimacy would explicitly be mentioned in the Eurobarometer, it would be too easy, you know? It would be too easy, and you would be done in 1 or 2 days with your research. First, I appreciate Mashi's comment that what you do is not quantitative, but you do a qualitative debate with quantitative data that you absorb or extract from the Eurobarometer. You may create graphs or stuff like this, but you do not process a huge number of data to come to calculations, because you will discuss the images and numbers of the Eurobarometer against the idea of what is the legitimacy. Yeah? And what you first have to do is you have to define your working definition of what is legitimacy in our research. And you should extract also from literature, yeah? That you then can find and combine two questions that are regularly, not one time, but regularly asked in Eurobarometer. And the idea what is the public image of the EU or EU institutions is one element that can maybe be relevant for your research. So this is what you need to do. You need to define what is, for our research, our understanding of legitimacy, discuss it against the background of academic resources and literature, and then combine your understanding of literature with questions that you find. Yeah? And then you are capable to continue as the answer to the first question, or one bridge to answer the first question might be asked. The second thing for case selection, if you integrate the term that the country is Eurosceptic, that will be an open flame for criticism. Because people will argue, yes, just because Orban is expressing Euroscepticism, not entire Hungary is Eurosceptic, and you know, you must be much more differentiated because we're not looking to the government but to the people, public opinion. So maybe the more telling story would be what is the effect on the migration scenario and the management of the migration crisis for particular countries. For countries in the south that receive most of the country, the migrants or refugees, for countries that over time showed solidarity, or countries that projected to be solidaric with these countries, and told that the crisis would be not a crisis that affects them. Maybe this is more telling and could reduce the amount of countries. Up to you, but that would be for me a more stringent logic to justify which cases countries you select. And one further comment, and then I would like to stop, is when we talk about the management of the crisis, you need to figure out what could be the time frame for our analysis.
Yes.
So you should start with checking the legitimacy before the peak of the crisis and the respective measures taken by the European Union. You should not get into the trap that you measure at the height of the euro crisis, because maybe that would be misleading. So proper timing for the first time frame, then maybe height of the crisis, and then the time after, so that you develop also a time frame for your analysis where you measure your question, that you connect to legitimacy, and then you become closer to an answer to the research question.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Do you have questions? So we do not want to let you go, with more questions than you can with. But we have an appointment tomorrow, right?
Well, it's an ongoing process. The more you go into the topic, the more questions you have, etc. But this is good. This is good. This is not something bad. And if you get criticism, this is good. This is helpful.
Yes, sure.
If nobody says anything, we will not make progress.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that 10 countries are enough, or are you actually looking for more?
My recommendation would be less. What you need to find is countries that are proxies. A country that is a proxy for a country that suffers because so many migrants come, a country that is a proxy for solidarity, a country that is a proxy for non-solidarity. And then you have
5 countries will be
3, 4, 5, 10 is enough. It's more than, it's too much. It's a much more countries that maybe a little bit, deviating from a clear answer.
The only thing you want to find out is there any change in legitimacy? And therefore, maybe you don't need 10.
And about the terminology, the legitimacy itself. I'm really confused, and a little bit my colleagues.
What's legitimacy?
Yeah, I would research really more about that. So,
Yeah. But I think students will say there are tons of literature about that.
yeah.
But think about, for example, output legitimacy, think about input legitimacy, think about trust, image. So these are all have some questions relating to what is your image of the, what do you trust in, do you think that you is producing something meaningful? So these are kind of questions give you some idea about legitimacy.
We have a point tomorrow, and I will give you some reading recommendation that maybe is helpful for you. You had one piece of literature that was dealing with the legitimacy of police among migrants. Very, very interesting topic, but it's not important, it's not relevant for you. It's not relevant for you. I will make you some suggestions tomorrow.
Thanks so much.
And please, here.
عندها حكي
We're doing talk number 2, which is quantitative analysis of voting patterns. Our main question is, did your receptive parties vote together in the 9th term of the European Parliament elections? Here's a very simple, basic preliminary outline of our presentation and then paper, I would suppose. And then just jump straight to the main question and then the sub-question.
Basically, our topic is informed by a quantitative analysis of voting patterns in the 9th European Parliament elections. So our study and analysis is focused and is conducted by main together in the 9th European Parliament elections? In order to answer this question, further questions need to be answered. What defines Euroscepticism in general? And what are the features that shape Eurosceptic parties? And based on the above, what are the possible divisions to which different Eurosceptic parties belong? What is the relationship between such defining features of respective Eurosceptic parties and the behavior of those parties? Are voting patterns of such parties based on, or at least impacted by their behavior? Based on this previous research, could the 8th European Parliament elections play a role in encouraging Eurosceptic parties to vote together in the 9th European Parliament?
So, in terms of the literature that we've been able to locate so far, we have a very good point of entry, which is provided by the professors, which is the article by Sarah Hobolt. The title is The 2014 European Parliament Elections Divided in Unity. This article has proven to be of high relevance for our topic. It offers a very practical definition of Euroscepticism that is easily adoptable and workable into our research. It also, based on such a definition of Euroscepticism as it provides, it offers a clear division of such parties into right-wing, left-wing, and what also would suppose would be the equation with hard Eurosceptic parties and soft Eurosceptic parties with respect to their views to common issues like immigration, economic crisis, what else, expansion, integration, redistribution, both for all EU member states. We've also been able to find other relevant literature that we're not so sure how it is like books and articles and book chapters. This is just, we have not went through every single piece that we've been able to find so far, but it's just parts of it. And they all seem to address the books, at least. They all seem to address the topic that we have in a broader and much deeper sense than articles do. Articles, based on our research, have been somewhat limited. In fact, I would say very limited in terms of how they view the topic. But we will still see and have to go through these sources together and decide if we're eventually going to adopt them into our research or not, or look for more. So we're still open in that regard. Articles, of course, as I said before, our primary source is the article by Sarah, and then another one also by her, and the rest, as you can see, they also touch on the topic in some sense or another. So yeah, we will still test these articles and read them and look at the books and see if they are if they're going to prove beneficial for our research. In terms of the academic context to which our study belongs, it is placed within quantitative studies. But of course, as the other group just was told by the professors, part of our research, at least the introductory part, has to be qualitative, because you have to qualify those Eurosceptic parties based on how you define them, how you characterize them, and whatever. So that's qualification. Then we move on to quantification by looking at the numbers in terms of their voting behavior for the European Parliament elections in the 9th term. I'll leave you with Noor, who's going to complete the list.
Hello. So I'll continue the presentation from here. So we will going to give an envision how we compose the research as a research plan. We will have abstract introduction. This we will be writing at the end when we conduct the research, because abstract have to state the finding and some conditions. So and then the methodology. We're going to use the quantitative approach to test the data, because mainly we are based on data to answer the question that we have. Of course, we have data, we have analysis of data, and of course, lastly, we will say the conclusion, how we are listening, how we see, how we will answer and why, and the list of references. At the end, this is how we will conduct it. So the methods of grade and sources data. So our research, as we mentioned before, is quantitative. We will analyze the voting, and also we have to look at the behavior of the voting and the voters from the 89. Of course, we will just look on the respective parties, and we will answer also the question of this consistency between them in the voting. So we are aware, we will talk about that, we are aware that there is two groups, which are the, we have the list here. So we have the SAW, here, and we have now. And of course, we have the total rejection. The soft is like they have opposition, they are rejection from national, and just like but these ones, they are total rejection. They do not want more Europe. So we are aware of this, like, and the question like what will make them come together. So this is why, because there's like interest, participation, ideology, what we bring together. So we did adapt this dimension because we adapted SARA, which we more talking about left wing and right wing. So this will be together too. Also, we will only looking for two reasons why we will vote together: is the immigration and the economy. That they will come together and vote together because we have to answer if they will vote together. I know I want to shift to the professors. If I am so bright when I looked in the data and how we calculate and we have managed for the data of what votes. So we have to look in the document and we have to look on who did no voting, who did vote for, and who against. And then there's numbers. So it's like 100 something, and there's 70 or no votes. So we have to calculate this and make it as a percentage of 100%. Yeah. Yeah. So and then I was looking at the chart, and maybe sometimes one party and another party will come as 64, like this, and the other is like 64. Should the numbers be the same, or it should be close? It can be like 60 and 62. Can I say that they will? I don't know, because while I was looking and observing it, I was like, yeah, I need to know more about it.
We're not decided about how we're going to approach the numbers, but I would say, for this stage at least, we would look at the numbers in terms of how many seats they were able to get, and then deduct the percentage of that out of the whole percentage of EMP seats.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was have something to learn about this. And the sources, as we said, we are together and basically on before conferences. So it's tension me. I can't say anything. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Again, we are ahead of time. So 10 minutes for you. Questions and comments, please. Do you understand what they are doing? Would you do the same? Would you do differently? Do you need more clarification? Please, go ahead.
Well, I read on the first slide of the presentation, I think you're talking also about behavior, right?
Yeah.
Tracing behavior. So maybe I think it would be a good idea to trace and find literature on political behavior, specifically in areas regarding sociology. So maybe it can...
That's a good point, but that's beyond the broad perspective of our research. We're looking at, for instance, how would Eurosceptics react to, and thus then vote for Eurosceptic parties at the EU level, if they, for instance, agree on being anti-immigrant, for instance, or opposing further European integration or division of wealth, like, for instance, what Germany did in the crisis when they supported low-achieving economies in the southern states. Some Eurosceptics here did oppose to that. And you have Eurosceptics in the southern states calling for more money to come to their country. So not all Eurosceptics are opposed to the EU. Some need more EU, more expansion, more integration. Others are calling for this. And those that call for this usually belong to the north, and those that call for more belong to the south. So it's a much different perspective from what you think. Yours is very excellent, but does not apply in our context. Thank you.
If I understood correctly, are you going to do for the 2019 election for the European Parliament?
Yes.
So do you need also to do a timeline like when the European Parliament was established and you need to go to the 17th? Did you see like the rise of the Eurosceptic, or is it like too redundant?
That would be too much. Yes, we're just limited to the 9th term. Yeah.
That's it.
There's
Well,
previous
for
research
research
on
something
the same answer because it's in the guidelines.
Exactly.
We forced them to do so, sorry for that.
Yeah. Anybody else?
There's just something I didn't quite grasp. So you said you were going to talk about the Eurosceptic parties, and then you mentioned the right wings and the left wings. You're just going to talk about the excessive right wing party and the left party, or you're just going to mention other parties that have Euroscepticism?
Well, the definition of Euroscepticism, to my own personal surprise, includes left politically oriented parties. Okay? Now, I did not know that before. I usually think, well, I equate Euroscepticism with right-wing politics. Then that's a mistake. Okay, being Eurosceptic is you're critical of EU policies, but in different ways, right? As a Greek citizen, I would say I am critical of the EU, thus I am Eurosceptic with respect to wanting more integration into the economy, for instance, of the EU, right? But as, let's say, a right-wing Western European citizen, I would say, no, I am Eurosceptic, I'm critical of the EU, I need less money going out of my country into Spain, for instance, or less integration, or less immigrants coming into my country. See? So both are Eurosceptic, but with respect to different views and modes of thinking. And you know, saying we'll dividing those parties based on party politics, like left and right wing, is not the only division for right wing for Eurosceptic parties. So different scholars have different classifications, even different definitions, I would say.
So maybe instead of dividing it to left and right, maybe you can divide it to people who advocate for less Europe and those who advocate for a different Europe. Maybe. Wouldn't that?
But that does not help you so much when it comes to finding the numbers and giving them shape, because that would require, you know, surveys the size of Earth itself. So I mean, you can't do that, even in social science itself.
Okay, well, we did that with the guidelines deliberately because of our experiences. We saw that in previous years students deviated quite a lot from what we thought they should do. And therefore, the first thing we put in bold is methodology and not topic. So we wanted to train on methodology. We don't want to invent new approaches, but just use this approach. And this approach is look at the voting patterns in parliament, in parliamentary votes. That's it. You should train that. And you should apply this methodology to answer a certain question, which is, do Eurosceptic parties vote together? But first of all, I think this will also, shorten your research. My or our recommendation would be to select one of the party groups, political groups in the European Parliament, because they are together in one group because they think they have something in common. And the question is, how much do they have in common? How much do they actually vote together when they decided to form one political group? And then it's perhaps one idea would be they are left-wing and right-wing people together in a Eurosceptic group, and because they are left and right, they deviate in social policies, but they vote together in something like that. This is our idea behind it. So you should first of all decide which party group to select. The second thing is, do you have any expectations about policy areas where they should go together? Because that would be natural, or because in the literature there's already some, or do you have any policy areas where they do not go together? Because they have some more ideas, and then they are not only defined as Eurosceptics, but as left and right, or northern and southern, or whatever. And then, most of all, because methodology is the core of what you should do. In all groups, set up your database. This is what you have to do in any case. And then you have to decide, do you want to use all, I do not know, 700 votes they already have, or I do not know how many it does. This is quite a lot. Do you need them all, or do you want just to do a policy area, you can select that. So that's important. And then how do you work with this data? Well, I already gave you an idea how you should treat that. This is what we wanted to do here.
Yeah.
And you should not do that manually because it takes too much time, but use Excel or something.
I will, yeah. So I just did it right because I
A last Perhaps a last small idea, because I think one of the political groups in the European Parliament included the UKIP party at the beginning of EP9, but they left. Does that have any impact on coherence? So that would, or is this group still working without the UKIP? Do they have enough members? That's another question, more technical question.
And just wait for anyone else who wants to join in and comment or ask something. Okay, then I will continue. I think you're already on a good track. You have, I think, the relevant literature already shown us on screen, and this contributions by Beck and Cheria. I think are good reading for you to identify what's meant by hard and soft Euroscepticism. And then I can only accept to operationalize it into some sort of research, into a methodology that helps you to answer the question. You must have a different party groups. And the expectation would be they are a party group because they have something in common. And then you would expect that they were both coherent. But in any given regard, as my colleague just said, in any policy area, so you have to identify policy areas. And it should be, of course, community competences, community policies, but where the parliament is the same. When the voting of the parliament is of relevance, and you have another limiting factor. You can't do it with every voting because you must have broadcast votes so that it's clear who voted in favor or against what. If it is anonymous voting, it will not help you anyhow. And then, and this is an experience we made over time, it is not important if they voted against or in favor, or if they just, abstain from participating in the voting. It's only about the homogeneity. So how many of them participated in this voting, and what they do, is it homogeneous, or do they deviate from each other? So the question against or in favor is more or less unimportant. Maybe later discuss a little bit what you figure out, but for the voting behavior itself, it's only the consistency of homogeneous or even not homogeneous voting behavior. That's it.
Okay, I have a question. What would be your reaction if I would say that they do vote together, but then if you look at the policies that they vote either for or against, those with right-wing affiliation seem to vote together, either against or for, and those with left-wing affiliation.
Then you have to have two separate policy groups. You see that they have two separate policy groups. A right-wing hard Eurosceptic group, and then you would look to the right-wing hard Eurosceptics group there. And then you have another group, and you also look at them. Do the socialists vote together? Do the green vote? But you should not focus on the green and the socialist, not just on the Eurosceptics. Because somehow it's strange that Eurosceptics who are against the European Union should work together in the European Union. So that's the puzzle.
Yeah.
And you would end up with a differentiated result. That's good. I think that's good because that shows that you have scratched under the surface. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So we continue with our team number 3. Please take the stage.
So good afternoon, colleagues, professors. Today I'll be presenting for you about Team 3 project research, which consists of will be conducted by Amal Hamdan, Daniela Gavai, and myself, Majid Mood. First of all, our topic is about discourse analysis training, European imaginaries of EU heads of states and governments in 2020. Now, as per our research question, so we formulated in two different ways, more or less as directs to the same idea, which is in the context of European imaginaries. How do we use heads of states and governments foresee the EU and its future integration? In 2020, yes. Or in other words, in the context of European imaginaries, what can the ideas of the EU's heads of states reflections in 2020 tell us about the future of the EU and its integration? In this area, in the context of this question, we will later really appreciate if you give us our feedback on some areas like we will be giving you questions about. Our relevant academic literature, so during the previous period, what we've managed to reach until now, so what we did actually, is we have our research. First of all, before going to European imaginaries, we started with the concept imaginaries itself, which is ways people imagine their social existence, how they fit together with other, how things go between them and their fellows, and consequently they are descriptive as well as evaluative of their social surroundings and their proceedings. So this would reflect that the idea of imaginaries is a bit broad. So we had to go more into its context, which took us a little bit to political imaginaries, since it's more related to our research, which is a domain which consists of a set of representations that go beyond the limit established by the results of experience and deductive reasoning. However, this is still not what we want exactly. We reach eventually to European imaginaries, which is analysis of long-term strategies of political decision makers which shape the EU and its future development. And of course, from our research, as you can see on the screen here, it goes into two parts. So first of all, we have defined what is European imaginaries, and then what we are going to do is find heads of states related speeches, press releases, and interviews regarding their ideas about the future integration and the future of Europe, specifically in the year 2020. So here, my colleague Amal can...
Basically, our literature going to be analyzing the text and speeches and interviews using the discourse analysis tool. So discourse analysis had a lot of tools. So basically, I'm not a discourse analysis expert, and it needs a lot of information to get an expert in it. But research about tools that, because the discourse analysis, basically you have to understand the meaning behind the things, and we were confused what tools we should use. So if you give us an advice about approaches, we give after this study we give 3 approaches that we can use it and we sort it by based on our preferences. So that, and I have another question that and the thing that do we have to use only Euroactive website, or we can use another news agency? And what specific areas should we be, very specific areas of integration that we should go in?
So yeah, this brings me to my next slide, which will be the theory academic context of a research question. So from our readings, we came to something a bit a method or that is a bit away from discourse analysis itself, which is liberal intergovernmentalism, and those who would like to take your feedback on this idea, if we can include this maybe to a smaller context. But since, like, for example, in regarding what we can use liberal intergovernmentalism as a methodology to understand the imaginaries of European heads of states, specifically in integration. The imaginaries of the national heads of states and governments are decisive for the future development of the EU, since they hold the bargaining power in the European Council of competence shift to the EU and EU's institutional design, words of Moravchik. And then later, the main, of course, side, which we, of course, need to focus on, is the discourse analysis. So, as my colleague mentioned, we would have to choose from the following discourse analysis approaches: socio-psychological characteristic analysis, cognitive psychology, or pragmatic. Now, moving to the next slide, our structure and steps to answer the research question. So, first of all, we have our research question, as we mentioned before. So, we have 2 parts. It goes like, first we have to do our academic literature review on the application of discourse analysis in literature, understand, see how do they do that, and take that these ideas from them. And of course, liberal intergovernmentalism At the same time, we will be scanning for and mapping discourses of EU heads of states on their ideas of future, for the EU's future and its integration. Another question comes here, whether we need to focus on a specific area of integration or shall we be general. Then after we do these two parts, we'll apply the theory on the discourse and then link it to the idea of European imaginaries, so it would eventually give us the finding and the conclusion. So what are EU heads of states imaginaries in 2020 about the future of the EU? Methods applied and sources explored. So first of all, it's mainly qualitative. We'll not be dealing a lot with numbers. Maybe my colleague Daniela now later she will add that part. As per qualitative literature review and identify concepts and theories from the university's databases. Qualitative is also gathering heads of states ideas about the EU and integration, etc. Analysis of these gathered information, review and interpret these information, and quantitative. Daniela, please.
So we were thinking about also how to enrich our qualitative analysis with some numbers, or if numbers could help our conclusion to be more based. And so we thought about maybe finding a specific relevant keyword. And this could have been done only after that we find the discourse analysis tool, the relevant one for us, and choosing relevant keywords in order to look for them in press releases databases, in order to quantify over time the amount of press releases, articles, interviews. We can also divide it per press type, if it's an interview or an article or a news report, and to see over time the numbers behind the quality data. This, we're not so sure about this. We would appreciate your feedback on that. And also I would like to just add something to what my colleague Amal said before, that we basically have two axes, so to speak, to explore. The one is the discourse analysis tool, and the other one is a theory according to which we analyze our case. So what we are not so sure about is, should we choose one theory and one discourse analysis? Can we choose multiple, or is it too overload for this case? We will be happy to have your guidance in this matter.
Of course, eventually after all that, we'll have to draw our conclusion of the text. As for sources explored, of course, these sources are that we used until now to, for this presentation. We have some more sources that we did not examine yet, but mainly our sources as academic literature, it will be for the definition of European imaginaries and to give academic literature to give us better understanding of discourse theory. However, we will have something maybe different from others. It's regarding that we will be dealing with press releases, news, interviews in which heads of states discuss their own, in which they reflect their own ideas about the future of the EU, such as Euractiv as advice and Nexus database. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, 10 minutes. Just 20 minutes left. So we have another 10 minutes for you guys. Please, questions and comments. Do you understand what they aim for, and does it meet your expectations when you read the description of the team research?
Okay, can I ask you? So you guys think, since we will be talking about European EU's head of states, ideas and reflection about the future of the EU and its integration. You saw integration goes in several aspects. It's, integration in general would be a huge deal. So do you think it would be better to focus in one area or focus on specific area, or what? Please share your comments. Please.
Well, I think you should focus on only one area, because if you deviate a lot from the core of the research, you're going to just spend time that you need to focus on the core of that topic, because I think discourse analysis is mainly qualitative research. Using a quantitative part or quantitative research will actually take much effort and time that you need to focus on the main thing. That's my opinion. Feel free to take it or not.
Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated. And another question, if you can also answer us regarding using modern theory in our research, since also it's about integration. Shall we use integration theories such as LI? What do you think?
Actually, if I think as you're doing discourse analysis, by itself it's going to be too much work, you know. So, of course, it would be possible to do more than one theory, try to combine them and come up with a new, maybe new ideas that no one before you have been up with. But doing more than one theory would be nearly impossible during the time frame you have. This is what I think.
Anyone else who wants to recommend something, comment something, ask something?
Do you think we should categorize our research regarding these ideas or these views in the States into, let's say, European ideal European imaginaries regarding, for example, I have to say that they're pro-integration, other have to say that they prefer the status quo, or other member states that they don't need more integration, they're anti more integration. What do you think?
I would say that would provide us with a clearer picture of what you're going to do at the end.
Okay, I think that was a good start here, because exactly this is about the direction we want you to bring. So the imaginaries are more or less general frameworks or general frames for how the European Union should develop in the future. Could be more integration, but could also be more specific and say more integration where? More integration, for example, in terms of budget and debts, so the European Union should be able to raise money from the capital market, etc., which EU cannot do so far. And some member states, you see at the moment, there is some blockade because some member states are hesitant. They want, like the so-called frugal four, those who have to pay the money for the others, they're more careful. The others want more money from the European Union and want more integration. Or take the example of defense. Should the European Union develop a defense union? Some say no, some say yes. So, and the idea is, if the European Union wants to continue to go on with integration, you need all 27 member states to join. Therefore, you have to include all 27 heads of governments, not just 10 or 5, but even Malta, even Luxembourg, even Estonia, even Ireland, even Portugal, everybody. And so that's enough to do, to find a statement by the Irish Prime Minister about what he thinks, a statement by the President of Cyprus, what he thinks about the future of the European Union. This is what you have to do. And then framing, don't take too much time in it. Just do very simple or general ideas. What do they say about, for example, defense or budget, or general? Do they want to have more competences on the member states or more competences in the parliament or whatever? So that's what you have to do. And then all 27, of course, and I think this is the best comment you can get, do something less. Don't do the quantitative thing. You don't have any benefit from that. It's just, you need all 27 to do something together. So it's unimportant whether the one says 10 times budget, and only the other says 1 time budget. It's meaningless. So just do it, because here we have discourse analysis on the guidelines, and we mean that. We didn't write quantitative analysis here.
Yeah. So you just mentioned it. My recommendation would have been do one step back and think about what could make your topic relevant. And the answer was already provided. When you want to go ahead with any form of integration, you need the positive vote of all 27 member states, who is right now representing the member states, the heads of states of government. So this is people who can speak, yeah, and this is relevant. So the overall perception of how you approach your topic is in the governmental understanding. That is the answer to this meta-theory question, but this is something to explain at the beginning, what your understanding of the topic is, why it is of relevance, and how you then translate it into something where you want to get the images or imaginaries of all 27. So this is the justification why you have this full body of member states integrated into your research. And exactly this your suggestion and the confirmation you got, finally you have to order all the verbal expressions that are done in the discourse about what kind of future of Europe, in who is in favor of deepening and further integration, who wants to contain it like this, to preserve the status quo as you've mentioned it, and who maybe wants to have less integration, even renationalize. Yeah? And for you guys, then you have to think about what could be the policy area where we can find confessions made by the respective people. I think the meta topic right now is pandemic. The pandemic is a stress test for all. How do we see with the open or not open borders? And what about solidarity, money, food to fall? Maybe this is the game changer for some who reconsider how they perceive themselves and in the process of European integration. So I think we have one topic that was frequently debated during different council meetings, even European council meetings. And that would be the further recommendation. Where do you find sources? Of course, sometimes in press releases, publication by the press. But we have frequently European Council meetings, right now video conferences, but these video conferences are surrounded by statements. Everyone addresses then how he saw the debates and just joins into interpreting the meeting. So surrounding these European Council meetings and meetings of Council of Ministers, you will find statements by top politicians. You have to identify who's speaking for which country, and then you will find something. And usually all have some press releases about our Prime Minister said at the video conference that, and then it's available in English. And you do not need a huge body of text or speeches that cover 20 pages. That's unimportant. Sometimes it's only, half a sentence that is decisive. But you have to figure out where do I find the sentence and what is the important sentence.
And if you do not find it in English, I told you can use Google Translate. You can use the Greek language newspaper in Cyprus or the Estonian newspaper, or hopefully not, but in case you don't find something in English, that's possible.
But when you just figure out when did the European Council meet, when was it convened, and around these days you will find before and after a lot of press statements, press releases by the respective governments where they argue this is our national position or this is what we got out of the meeting. So we will find some framing of the meeting and at this time an image that they have.
I have two questions. Regarding the press releases and the expressions of these leaders, should we focus more on interpretation or should we actually cite the important things in our opinion?
I think this is part of your discourse analysis. You take some sentence, some quote from a person, and then you have to sort it into one of the categories. And you have to justify why this is an expression of. So you start, of course, with some quotation, and then you have to discuss for you as a team and for us as your audience why this is an expression that belongs to preserve the status quo or reducing the level of integration. And this is what you have to do, that you have to come to an idea what kind of key traits identify that this contribution belongs to.
Okay, and the second question, this case is actually starting with defining integration, choosing one definition. So I'm wondering, because our body of the paper should be very long, as you said, taking 27 states statements. How should we how should we elaborate on the term integration? Because from what research, it's an endless possibilities of definitions, and if you said that we need to justify our selection, obviously the word integration should be very specific.
Not necessarily. It's the meaning, not the word.
Yes.
That makes it a discourse analysis and not a document analysis. And you have to focus on meanings. And meanings are not necessarily expressed in the terms you would use. So this is the same for legitimacy. There's no question in the Eurobarometer using the term legitimacy. You have to use other questions which give you an idea about what you think is legitimacy. And here the same. What they say as heads of government should be interpreted by you as, and the simplest way for you, and probably that would be even enough in the framework you have for your team report, would be, yes, in favor of more integration, keep the status quo, or denationalize. Only the three categories.
So in frame analysis, discourse analysis, and also content analysis, the idea is that you develop codes. That a certain expression stands for something, and this code belongs to in advance of deepening integration or quite the opposite. So the European Union has an emergency mechanism that should create solidarity in a situation like we had in the beginning of the pandemic, and the Italians asked for the activation of this mechanism, but the reactions that are expected are reactions according to the treaties, voluntary reactions. So there is no commitment, no binding commitment to support. So some argue we have to enhance this, and we have to make this tool more reliable. That's an expression of deepening integration. And this is how you have to develop codes. Italy was suffering differently than other countries, and maybe here a certain code can be expected, and this is a proxy for, and it belongs to the category. And when the Dutch say, but it will cost our money, that would be hesitant position. And then you have to figure out, do they want to contain what we have achieved, or do they want to reduce? But this is subject to the debates between you and
the analysis itself.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're a little bit out of time, but still we should spend a few 20 minutes more to team number 4.
So we're doing what's going now as the European Union's 2030 climate and energy framework, and we're going to study how the renewable energy power would influence this framework. Actually, we're thinking to trace how the energy, the power influence that had been practiced by the renewable energy industry before had already affected this framework, and through work we will be examining our main question, which is what are the impacts of lobbying in terms of decision making regarding power dynamics and the climate and energy framework on 2030 action plan. So we're going to have a huge number of variables, starting with lobbying, decision-making process, power and influence. We're going to also have to study how environmental changes and how do the European Union, how does the European Union perceive these changes, and how actually the plan is going on. So to achieve that, we think that we need to go through a process that would take us into the qualitative and the quantitative research at the same time, and that takes us to the next slide.
Yes, so our list is a bit short because we have too many questions regarding policies that we should integrate, because we thought about also environmental policy, agricultural policy, competition policy, foreign policy, and we didn't know which to integrate to our research because our research is about processing and influence, and there are so many policy areas that we could integrate and we didn't know which one exactly, so we want your feedback on this. But the main policy that is adopted here is the policy of European energy and climate change policy, which has 5 pillars. One is increasing the energy efficiency, which means saving 20% of EU energy by this year, 2020. The second one is tripling the amount of renewable energy by 2020, such as electricity and wind. The third one is raising the amount of clean hydrocarbon used by individuals, which means the greenhouse gases emissions, to reduce them and process them with a 2030 action plan. Strengthening EU carbon market internally, meaning member state markets and the EU markets, and that's it.
So, theory and field framework. So, it's a bit tricky for us to find out which theory to use. So we have put some suggestions for discussion. Maybe you can support us with this. Mainly, we think that we can use new functionalism in relation to liberal integralism, and through which we can study how the process of integration to the new, because neo-functionalism itself was or started by studying integration processes and how international actors would affect each other through the spillover effect, and relating it to the liberal integralism, I think, would be efficient, especially if we could integrate within our discussion, propose knowledge and power, through which maybe we can identify which actors do have the knowledge, who possess the knowledge, and therefore would be the most influential in terms of both knowledge and power. So that would actually clarify what our actors are, who are who the looking forces within this context are.
As for our steps to answer the research question, we will be identifying the term of lobbying in the EU and the political influence actors. Who are they, like the actors? How many actors do we have, or to put them in groups? Another thing is to define the action plan of 2030 through the 2014 and 2018 framework, which is it's the plan the EU is setting to reduce the gas emissions by 2030 to 55% compared to 1980, in addition to increasing energy efficiency and the share of renewable energy. So that will lead us to when another thing, the influence term. We will be defining the term influence in a measurable unit. So because the influence and power concepts that are quite hard to measure, especially in complex decision making. Therefore, that will help us in the influence analysis or research. Another thing, we will be linking the theory that we will be, that Maher mentioned, to reach a conclusion about the impact of lobbying on the framework of climate and energy.
Okay, so we're going to use these methods to analyze our research and results. This one was based in the article on,
Yes, article
yeah. And it is the ear instrument, and sorry, I didn't have time to prepare.
So, simply put, this instrument includes eco-perception, auto-perception, and research analysis. The first eco-perception is the perception of EU member states. How do they perceive themselves in terms of lobbying about the climate change? The auto-perception is the perception of other member states on other member states. So when for example, Germany's perception on Spain's perception about climate change. And the third one is the research analysis, is the third party that balances the goal achievement of each member state and clarifies the anticipation of each member state. This is the model. And that's it.
2 minutes at a time, and again, of course, the question to all of you. Questions, comments, please feel free to.
Yeah, we really struggled during this research because we have so many policy areas and so many theories that we know that we shouldn't integrate because it would be too wide.
This is why we do this.
Yeah, and we want to narrow it down, so if you have any suggestions.
I don't know if I followed up well with the presentation, but and please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that your main focus will be on power and energy industry itself, and this industry, how it influences the framework, right? So it's not only about, as you mentioned in the last thing, like it's about member states between each other.
It's about process tracing. We analyze the process tracing of the 2030 action plan.
Yes, but I think like what you need to focus on is how the industry itself, energy industry, is like the lobbying and industry itself, you know, and how it's affecting this framework for 2030. In what policy area I can't add here, I'm not sure to be honest, but it's a reflection.
The thing is that also we don't know if we should integrate also institutions and NGOs into the equation or just member states. This was our clarification from
We'll come to this question. Anyone wants to join in?
Well, regarding the theory, do you really need a theory to do this research? You have so many theories, and it's really hard to.
No, I'm not using all of them.
No,
Yeah.
Suggested.
That's why we're here.
We believe, yeah, we do need.
So which one?
None of them.
We'll ask very good in reducing now.
That's my job.
But no need functionalism is our focus. If we continue.
Good.
So, again, I'm not sure if I get the whole stuff before. So what you need to do exactly is to find like power and energy industries and then lobbying, their lobbying powers. And how is that affecting the EU's framework for 2030 regarding gas emission, as you mentioned? So maybe what you should be tracing is, I don't know, their bargaining or negotiations in terms of like, I don't know, this would be like extra costs on these industries, do they care as much about the environment or about their profit? I don't know, is it true how I got it?
Actually,
is
we
it
thought
right?
of that, but it's more about the policies. If they want to really affecting the industry more than how the industry affects the decision making. So we
think the other way around.
So yeah, the question makes you presuppose that it should be the focus should be on the industry itself, but what focus should be in the industry, you know? It's about the EU framework.
The framework is affecting the industry.
Actually, the framework is about enhancing the EU industry giving more economic opportunities for the European Union member states and to start reducing gas emissions. So it is that we can read it from either sides.
Okay, so simply put, is that the framework of the 2014 and 2018, the revision of 2014, and the 2030 action plan is the case study. We are analyzing this specific study via. We are studying the lobbying of actors within the EU via this study. This is maybe we clarify it a bit.
So the theory that really is important, or the theory term that you've mentioned here, is the pluralism. Because we perceive that the European societies are pluralistic, so there's not just one interest, there are many interests, and these interests are represented. And we are talking about democracy, so open, transparent, accessible, and this is what we need.
Okay, I think you should both hire Buddha and Mashi. Buddha to reduce the amount of research you have to do and make it feasible, and Mashi will point to which direction you should go. I think Mashi got it, what we wanted you to do. Do it according to the guideline again. Don't do something else. We didn't ask you to do agriculture, we didn't ask you to measure the influence of member states. We wanted to use one specific lobby group, and one specific decision. Not everything, but this specific decision is the 2030 climate and energy plan. And even more specifically, what part of this decision was made or was designed or was modified or was deleted because of the influence of this lobby group, of the renewable energy. This is what we want you to do. And we gave you, I think you got it, you got the EAR methodology. This is how we could do that and how we do it in the academic community, how we measure influence. We want first to have a look at do the lobby groups think themselves that they have had an influence on this specific decision? Do other insiders think that this lobby group had an influence on this specific decision? And the third one is, what were the initial aims of this lobby group? What did they want to achieve? What is the final outcome of this decision? And what are the differences? Did they get what they wanted? Did they get 50% of what they wanted? Or did they get nothing? This is the simple thing. You don't need liberal environmentalism, you do it before. This is like Buddha's recommendation. You don't need that. Don't spend your time on that. You only have a limited amount of time. So you don't have to select policy areas. You have already one decision, one or two decisions actually, the 2014 and the 2018 version. And then you have to go into details. So is it 55% or is it 40%? Is it voluntary or is it voluntary? These are the things they are looking for. I think the biggest challenge you have to face is who is the lobbyist? Who lobbies? It's not something diffuse like it's the renewable energy. Who actually does the lobbying? And the problem is here, they had a lobby group, but this lobby group was dissolved because of, I think, financial reasons. And who did that? Who represented the renewable energy in the policy making of the revised energy and climate regulation? Who did that? Perhaps there was a smaller group, perhaps it was two groups, or perhaps it was individual only. So I don't know. It's just
Okay, I would like to continue. Would you please go back to the table with this three categories: ego perspective, altruism perspective, and researcher's perspective, the table? Perception here. So you don't have to think about which policies to integrate. You have already one debate. This debate is about this framework. Yeah? And this is not done somewhere in the dungeons of the European Commission in Brussels. This process is done in public. So people get aware the Commission is sooner or later proposing a first paper, first draft of such a framework. And I, as an industrialist, I have something else. Because if I have invested in fossil fuels, they will undermine my future businesses. So I will prevent, and I approach them, and I have tools to approach them because we are present there with our industry association, and they will approach the commissioner, the guys from the commission, parliamentarians, and whom else. The guys from renewables, meanwhile, also have their association, and this association was switching in the process. So what you have to identify, when started the process, and when started the process is called consultation. So the European Commission is not proposing something, kept it locked, and then they come with a decision in front of the Council and the Parliament. This is debated. All are invited to participate in this debate. So lobbying is something that is perceived as positive. Your theory connection is pluralism. Pluralism in the form of interest representation / lobbying. And the other theory term that you have is influence. So what you have to figure out is, in this political process, when did it start, what is the end point, and in there's a change from one version of the paper to the second version of the paper. And you have finally to figure out what did change and why did it change. And we can, of course, assume that the guy from renewable industry has an interest that the European Union is for the future subscribing to very ambitious goals to convert the energy market into relying on renewable energy market. Why? It's about investment. If you invest in your industry and the Commission says, and the member states finally say, we don't care what kind of change, then we have invested into something that is not bringing any benefit. So we have some really important interest that the European Union is adopting ambitious goals for this change. So the inner perception is the perception of the association that represents renewable energy. This is your E. And all others are other perceptions. Their opponents are those guys from fossil fuels, maybe some member states, as everyone else. But you have to identify, this is my inner perception, then you know about the other perception, researchers, what you do. This article at the same time equips you with an equation that you can understand political influence as goal achievement, intervention, and these things. So you know how you have to, or how you can deconstruct the term influence. We ask you for influence, and this is what you can do. They have certain goals, and then you have to check for the EU perspective, what is their goal? Maybe they have issued a policy paper. Maybe they have issued some recommendations, some statements, what they expect from this policy process of the European Union, and this you can apply and use it for the analysis. Were they able to get their ambitious goals into the paper? Could they preserve it in their first proposal, or was it needed? And this is why you are the group is for, because you have to do tough reading. You have to go from the proposal to the next version of the paper and see what has changed. And is this change in favor of renewable industry or in favor of something else? And this is what you
have to add something. The EAR. So you first of all check what did they want to achieve in the beginning and what was the result in the decision. And there have been some changes. So this is what we find out. But you do not find out whether these changes are because of the lobbying. This could also be because of other reasons. Therefore, you need a perception. Did the lobby group say this change was because of us? Or did the other say, the author, this is because of the lobbying of the renewable energy? Therefore, you need a perception. Because you were not sitting in the room where they did all this negotiation. We don't know that. You only see the result. You see the start and you see the end. But you don't see it in between. And therefore, you need some insights to tell you.
So what you shall do is, of course, research. You should do it according to this theoretical frame and the methodology. But what you have to obtain is this detective mindset. You want to figure out who did what when, and who was provoking that there was a change or not a change. So this is what you do. And you don't have to think about neo-functionalism. You don't think about spillover effects or stuff like this. It's unimportant what states argue, because this is not your research question about. It's important. How did renewable industry behave in this process? Were they able to exert some influence? And to require a certain element of diligence.
And if you like to read the criminal stories, that's the best project you can do. It's like the detective finds out.
Thank you. Now you're detectives.